Let's go to Trudy McIntosh now. Trudy, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Yeah, Peter Dutton is a joke, were the words there of Anthony Albanese, really wanting to hone in on the lack of detail on nuclear. Now, Peter Dutton says he's not going to stick to Labor's timeline. He'll announce those sites when he wants to. But first, let's go through what Peter Dutton actually announced last night in his budget reply, because it seems that housing is going to be what the election will be fought on.
Yeah, housing, and how do we actually make sure there's enough homes, Laura, for people who want to buy one? How do we make it easier for people trying to get into the market, but also for renters? We've seen that in the budget, the government also trying to target that cohort. Peter Dutton believes the answer is in migration, in reducing the number of people who come to the country, that will, over time, free up more supply for people trying to buy and make it cheaper for those trying to rent. So he's proposing a 25% cut in the annual permanent migration intake. You can see there he wants to bring that number down to 140,000. As for the refugee intake, promising to slash that by a third. As for foreign students, people coming here to study at university, a similar policy to what Labor already announced in the last week or so, capping the number of students who can come here, making universities build more accommodation to house those if it wants to have more students. Finally, a foreign investor ban. So for 2 years, preventing foreigners from being able to buy existing properties. On the issue, though, of the total intake of people, this became a massive issue after COVID, as we saw that big spike in net overseas migration. You can see Labor's trying to get that number down there, but the contrast will be clear ahead of the next election. Labor's forecast in the budget says there'll be around 255,000 people coming in the next financial year. Mr Dutton's saying his number this morning will be around 160,000, so quite a big difference. But I'd point out, we've seen a lot of forecasts about this number before, and governments overshoot it. It's rare they actually do meet their own forecasts on that. I wanted to show you this clash this morning between Bill Shorten, a former Labor leader, and Peter Dutton on this issue of foreign investors. How big a problem is it actually really in terms of the housing market? Have a look.
Quick quiz for Peter Dutton. He says he's going to stop foreigners buying houses over the next 2 years. I just wonder if he knows how many foreigners bought houses in the last 2 years. Over to you, Pete.
Well, Bill, back to you. I mean, how did you go in the 2019 election? So,
oh, zinger. You just said before you didn't like personal attacks. As soon as you're under pressure, you go personal. How many people in the last 2 years who are foreigners bought houses in Australia, Pete?
Our policy, when you combine it all together, is a pretty significant
I'll tell you how low it is,
which is going to be good for Australians.
No,
it's less than 5,000,
gentlemen.
Yeah, they all go personal. And Bill Shorten talking about zingers.
That's politics, isn't it?
Yeah, that certainly takes me back. But I would say as well, Trudy, 5,000 isn't an insignificant number of homes bought by foreigners last year. And I'm sure voters would agree with that. But look, back to what we kind of started this conversation about and what Anthony Albanese was trying to hone in on this morning, and that was Peter Dutton explaining why we haven't seen his nuclear policy.
Yeah, it might be the actual reason, Laura. You don't want to get in the way when a government's kind of causing problems for itself. We'd seen that in the lead up to the budget with the detainee dramas. But I was pretty brazen, I thought, from Peter Dutton to say the only reason why we haven't seen the policy of where we're going to put the nuclear reactors under a coalition government is because of Andrew Giles. Is it more a factor of the internal pushback we'd seen in the lead up to the budget in formulating this policy? MPs not necessarily wanting a nuclear reactor to go in their electorate as we head towards polling day. This was Mr Dutton's comments, and you heard Anthony Albanese says, what a joke.
To be honest, one of our big problems has been Andrew Giles. One of the golden rules in politics is not to get in the way of your opponent when they're making a complete fool of themselves. And there hasn't been much free air, I've got to say, over the last couple of weeks.
What does the immigration minister have to do with your delays to your nuclear energy policy?
Well, he's out there making a fool of himself, and why would we bump him off the front page?
It didn't stop Mr Dutton making that migration announcement, so Andrew Giles is not getting in the way of one coalition policy. To circle back to housing, Laura, I think it is interesting the government saying it won't make a difference 5,000 homes. Well, the government's Housing Australia Future Fund doesn't create many more homes than that anyway. So in terms of the numbers, when it comes to housing, every little bit counts, and if it's important to build those amount of houses in the housing fund, a similar amount for foreign investors.
I completely agree. 5,000 is not an insignificant number. And if you look at what has already been built out of that 1.2 million home target in the next 5 years, well, that's 5,000 that has been built as well. So it takes some time to do. We know how long that target has been set for. Yeah, so I thought that was a bit of a weird point about the number of homes bought by foreigners. We'll see where that goes. Trudy, thank you.